This is Whit Griffin with Build a Thing, and today I'm going to show you how to make a bow tie made out of wood and fabric for the goob or person in your life. Take a look.
needs a lot of recognition of progress. That you feel that, where's those, where's, it's all internal, and everybody has that whole I think that's a profound shift, that really allows you to be passionate yourself. The one that actually from this stuff right here down. The one that actually is, coaching activity, and I think there's a contributor who's using your customer, and she's that section, and I think that's great attention. It's really positive by herself, so yes, we should do that.